Hi, John here, the hat guy. Today I wanted to talk about some current events that are going on and my opinion on what it means and what could happen. I'm talking primarily about the impeachment of our president, Donald Trump. Right now, it's we're a week before Thanksgiving 2019. And there's a hearing going on in the Senate about basically to decide whether or not the president should be impeached. Most of the country already thinks he is being impeached. It's not what it means. The question is, should he? Now, I could go into all of the evidence that has been presented, none of which is impeachable, none of which is even really wrong. And I could go into all the evidence that's been left out, that's been ignored, which is the side that's accusing the president, basically guilty of everything they're accusing him of. It's the oddest thing to be living in this particular time. But I don't want to focus on that. You can get both sides of that opinion pretty easily everywhere. If you're a conservative, you got Sean Hannity, Rush Limbaugh, and a slew of others. If you're a liberal, you've got people on that side to listen to. That's not why I'm here. What I want to give you is my opinion on the ramifications of impeaching this particular president. Let's assume for a minute that the Democrats win, and through some way they manage to remove the president from office, whether through this impeachment or forcing him through some other means. They will not give up until he's gone. We know that. They've also managed to do nothing, by the way, at all since they've been in power in the House. But that's not my point. My point is, what would happen? I truly think the left has an agenda, and their agenda is, not only do they not like Donald Trump, we know that. That's been well established that if in today's world, in late 2019, in the United States of America, if you can still consider yourself a liberal, then you're probably of the mindset that this country has done everything wrong throughout your entire life, and that it's a horrible place, and that, you hate freedom. I know people are going to tell me that's not what they believe. It is what you believe. You either hate freedom or you love freedom. You hate this country or you love this country. It's pretty hard to love this country and be a socialist or a progressive or a liberal in today's society. A decade ago is a different story. We aren't living in a decade ago. We're living in 2019. If they're successful in removing President Trump from office, what will happen? Well, they'll put somebody else in charge. Who gets to be in charge? Well, the order of succession means if they pull him out, then Mike Pence would become president. He's the vice president. Well, they hate him just as much. So they would follow right along with him. They're going to try to remove both of them, because who becomes president then? The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Can you imagine this country with Nancy Pelosi as president? That's a frightening thought. And I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. That's a frightening thought for both of us. It really is. However, I don't think that's their plan. What they want to do is actually reverse the decision that was made in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected president, and instead put Hillary Clinton in. That's what they want. Why they want it is not the issue right now. In a way it is. They want to destroy the country. They want it to be a socialist nation. They love the idea of us being like the Soviet Union. They want the United States to become what the Soviet Union was. And some of them will deny it. Most of them won't. They're embracing communism in a way that is baffling to those of us who have been around for a few decades. But if you successfully remove Donald Trump from office, there are, 100 million armed veterans and hunters and people that live in rural America, rednecks, whatever you want to call them, who not only own guns, know how to use them, and are pretty well stocked on ammo. And many of them, if not the overwhelming majority of them, have military training. Some of them may be my age, some of them may be older, some of them might not be. But all of them have one thing in common. They love the president, and they love this country, and they love what he is doing for this country. And if you remove him, then you'll have a lot of them rise up. All it would take is a single tweet from Donald Trump to say, hey, come bail me out. And we'd be in a civil war. It'd be that quick. Would we survive a civil war? That's the question. Would we survive a civil war, and would the world survive a second American Civil War? I don't think it would. I think it would come out a more drastic change of the map than was done after World War I. And if you know your history, that was a pretty drastic change of the map of Europe, especially. If a civil war were to break out in that fashion in this country, the country would probably, one of two things would happen. Either the president would be reinstated and the country would come back to some semblance of normalcy, at which time the president would probably, because I know I would at that point, institute a state of emergency, and which suspends all elections. So then they would lose the fact that he'll be gone in a few years. No, it'd be indefinite at that point, because under a state of emergency, under a federal state of emergency, all elections are suspended for the duration of the emergency. So that would backfire on them. If, however, they're successful in removing him and this war breaks out, what the most likely outcome is, if it extends any period of time, is that the union itself would dissolve. The United States was formed 250 years ago, roughly, with the idea that each state was a sovereign nation, and they would join together under a federal government as a kind of like a rudimentary early version of the UN. They would unite for a common good. That's what the Bill of Rights was all about. The Bill of Rights says, all these states can operate independently, but we're going to guarantee that they've all got these same rights across the state lines. They've all got, they have to have free trade amongst each other within the country itself. It was like a country with 13 individual countries inside of it. That all changed 80 years later when a couple of states decided they didn't want to be in the Union anymore, and they left. And President Lincoln at the time decided they can't leave. Once they're here for good, and we have to bring them back in. True meaning of the Civil War, by the way. Anyway, I think the Union would dissolve. It would remain, in name only. Some states would hang on to it. Maryland probably would be a primary example, and a handful of others. But I think we would see a division. I think most of the South would leave immediately. Florida would probably do its own thing. So would Texas. So would Hawaii. Probably Alaska. You'd have other states joining together. The Pacific states, Washington, Oregon, and California would probably all join together and rapidly become a third world socialistic nightmare. Places like Idaho and Montana, all of the Midwest would probably join together, and that would probably be the bulk of the landmass, but it wouldn't have a whole lot of people. But New England would probably do its own thing. A couple of them, like Vermont or New Hampshire, maybe Maine, might even try to join Canada. But the country would fracture. And how the lines all divide up doesn't really matter. The point is, the superpower would be gone. And that would be catastrophic on a global scale. Because right now, most countries in the world, they either respect the United States, or they respect President Donald Trump, or they fear the United States and they fear President Donald Trump. Any of those scenarios keeps the peace. But if Donald Trump is not president and the United States no longer exists, at least as a superpower, then you've got China, who really wants to be a superpower, Russia, who also really wants to be a superpower, and a handful of smaller ones. Those are the two biggest ones. But fights would start breaking out. Wars would break out all over the world. World War III would be unlike any war that we've seen in the past, because it would be truly global. Every country would be fighting every other country. Some of them would band together. Everybody in the Middle East would attack Israel because the United States is not there. What would North Korea do if the United States was suddenly gone? What would Iran do if the United States was suddenly gone? What would China do? What would India do? What would any number of nuclear nations do if the United States was not there? What would a lot of these third world nations do if the United States was not there to keep the peace? They would all be attacking themselves and their neighbors. It would be utter chaos. What would bring us out of that chaos? Here's my prediction. And if you're a liberal, you're going to hate my prediction. You may have liked it up until this point, or certain aspects of it. But if that were to happen, I think the UN would ask somebody who they know was respected and can control an organization that's global in scale. They would ask someone like Donald Trump to be the Governor General of the UN, at which point they would take control of the world, and we would have a one world government with Donald Trump at the helm. Now, if you're a liberal, you're probably pulling your hair out right now at the thought of that. And if you're a conservative, you're still pulling your hair out because the United States is gone. But there's not a good outcome, no matter which side of the fence you're on, if Donald Trump is impeached, in my humble opinion. I could be way off the mark. I don't know. I'm certainly not, savvy in all things political. I don't know a lot of the inner workings, but I do pay attention and I do see trends. And in my opinion, that's what would happen. So, there you go. My opinion. If Donald Trump is impeached, it's going to be bad for this country and it's going to be bad for the world. If he's not impeached, then yeah, all things will continue as they are, which means we'll still continue to get nothing done because the Democrats will continue to find other ways to remove him from office. Until the next election, at which point we, as the American voting public, will have our chance to remove them from office and maybe put some people in that are able to think rationally for a change, regardless of what they label themselves as. So, in my opinion, they're playing a very dangerous game, and they're playing a very dangerous game on a global scale. And most of them are not even aware of it. The truly scary thing is the ones that actually are aware of it. Those are the ones we need to fear. And we don't know exactly who they are. We know who some of them are, but we don't know who all of them are. But anyway, I'm the Hat Guy. That's my opinion. If you like hearing my opinion, be sure and do a like on the video. Be sure and subscribe and share it with all your friends. Have a great day.